That is the match is from our T2050, bringing the total to a $2.4 million total that we will be able to utilize for the purpose of business assistance and land use planning. So the scope of the RFP, well, the scope of the grant that we have decided to utilize for the purpose of this project is to look at early action business assistance that we can do along the corridor. That corridor is approximately from Van Buren to South Mountain Avenue, 7th for business assistance from 3rd Street to 3rd Avenue. For the land use planning, it will be from Van Buren to South Mountain Avenue, 7th Avenue to 7th Street. We're looking at starting this business assistance hopefully 2 years, maximum of 2 years prior to construction in some areas, depending on how our construction schedule is laid out. And we're also looking at the TOD planning and visioning that will be a part of this grant. They'll allow us to partner with the community to make sure that this is a project that is done with the community and benefits the community in the ways that they see necessary. So the purpose of the grant, how we put it together, was to do an RFP. Knowing that an RFP would be the most competitive process that we have, that was the reason why we went with this. We received 2 proposals for the grant. We had an evaluation committee that had a total of 6 individuals on there, 3 from the city of Phoenix, 2 from the community, and 1 from Valley Metro, which is our partner. They build, construct, and operate light rail. And so we felt it was very important to have them be a part of this evaluation committee. And so the scores that we received on this from the 2 proposals were listed here. Promise Arizona and Gold Evans scored higher than Callison, and so with that, we decided to move forward with the recommendation of the team. And so the prime on this recommendation is Promise Arizona and Gold Evans. The subs that they have are listed below. We have Local First, Wilson and Company, J2 Engineering and Environmental, the Center for Neighborhoods Technology, Friendly House, and Hustle Phoenix. We wanted to make sure that we listed all of the members of the recommended team so that we would know who all is being recommended to move forward with this process. And so the schedule, we were able to have this grant awarded in July of last year. And so we're hoping that with the recommendation today to move forward to our CTC, that will keep us on schedule to hopefully having formal council approval by May, and hopefully by end of May having the contract begin and completing this work within a 2-year period of time. And so with that, our recommendation is that we request the Citizen Transportation Commission to recommend City Council to approve and execute a contract with Promise Arizona and Gold Evans for an amount not to exceed $2.4 million to complete business action, TOD planning, and urban design services for the South Central Light Rail Extension Project. And I'll gladly take any questions that you may have at this time.
Yeah.
That's where I have a conflict with Mr. Monkey.
Thank you, Gil. We have a request from Mr. Gilbert, who's opposed to the project. So, Mr. Gilbert, you want 2 minutes? Is he here?
He is here.
Yes. Okay. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Paul Gilbert, 701 North 44th Street. I represent Mel Martin, who is a longtime and prominent citizen of South Phoenix. We have 2 main concerns. First, the acceleration of the South Central Light Rail extension, and secondly, the lack of what we feel has been community involvement on the decision to reduce the lanes of traffic from 2 to 1 lanes. It appears to us that this process was fast-tracked through the Commission to the Council without, in our view, substantive notification to the members who live in the immediate, the property owners who live in the immediate it was never adequately explained to many people in the South Phoenix area the effect of, and that this was going to be limited to one lane on each side rather than 2 lanes as many of them thought and anticipated. My request tonight is that you continue this a decision on this matter, and that you hold a hearing on the 1 lane versus 2 lane issue. We don't believe this has ever been adequately addressed before this commission. It certainly hasn't been adequately addressed with a great many people in the South Phoenix area. Now, our position is not without significant support. A petition has been gathered and turned in part to the Phoenix City Council, and there have been over 3,500 people who have signed the petition in opposition to the 1 lane configuration. Additionally, and importantly, many of these people claim that they had never fully had explained to them the difference between the 1 lane and the 2 lane concept. If you continue this tonight and hold a hearing as we are requesting, there will be an opportunity for the neighbors to come to listen to this issue and to participate in making a decision on this issue. You may well say that, wait a minute, this petition was presented recently to the Phoenix City Council, and the City Council denied the request to modify this from a 2 lane to a 1 lane. I'm not oblivious to that. Perhaps I am an eternal optimist or naive, probably a little of both. But we believe that if you could hold a hearing here and that we could fully vet this issue in front of the significant amount of people who are very dissatisfied and quite vociferous in their opposition to this 1 lane versus 2 lane item, it would, one, do a great deal of service to having vetted the issue and at least give an opportunity for this large group, again over 3,500 people, to have a forum in which they could express their views. And again, coming back to the naive part, we believe that if this commission were to review this issue again, that we are hopeful that they may not go with the recommendation for the 1 lane versus the 2 lane. And armed with that, then that gives us some significant ammunition to go back to the City Council to present our proposal. I know I went over 2 minutes, gracious of you, Mr. Chairman, to allow that. But in summary, we hope you continue this matter and that you could set this for a hearing before this commission. We do not believe this commission has ever adequately...
Paul, you did acknowledge you went over the 2 minutes. We gave you a little extra time. I know you charged by the minute, so...
No.
So go ahead. In conclusion, let's hear the in conclusion.
That's my conclusion.
No,
By the
thank you.
way,
Thank
may
you
I
very much.
correct you, I'm paid by the word, not the minute.
I think you're going to do well tonight, so thank you.
All right. I gave my conclusion. Our conclusion is we request...
Well, you're still up there, so thank you, Paul. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We understood it. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Roy? I did.
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant the petitioner's request.
I second the motion.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion? Rick?
Well, I was just going to say the City Council has dealt with, we have dealt with, and the City Council has dealt with the matter that Mr. Gilbert was discussing. The project is moving forward. The question for us tonight is, are we going to help businesses through the process here? I'm not slowing that down at all with a project that has been decided to move forward. So you've had the opportunity to talk to the City Council, the ultimate authority about this, and they've made a decision. And I wouldn't, we've weighed in on this matter, and prior commissions and the voters weighed in on this, and there was a whole process to design this already. But given that you petitioned directly to the city council who make the decision on this, and they've decided, I don't see any reason to slow down this contract, which is going to only help those businesses, regardless of the configuration. So I would not like to continue this.
Any, Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I'm seeking clarification for the recommendation. Was the recommendation to hold on this item? Or, because I was confused, I didn't think the discussion was germane to this specific issue on the agenda.
Well,
And so, I just need clarification on the proposal.
you have a letter that came to me. We have a call to the public. Mr. Gilbert came, called to the public, and asked us to consider his request. Commissioner Miller has made a motion, second, to continue this, and to continue this.
Continue this specific item on this.
Continue this specific item, to have a hearing, open and.
On this specific item, a hearing on this specific item.
No, I believe that the request is that we have a hearing on whether or not the 2 lanes versus the 4 lanes.
Okay, then I guess I would have a point of order as to whether or not that is an appropriate motion on the germaneness of the subject that we're on.
If I may, Chairman Pastor, so the appropriate motion here would be to continue the item, and we actually need to set, for a continuance, you actually need to set a particular date. However, if the commission wishes to proceed with a hearing, that would have to be set for discussion. That was not noticed on the open meeting law, would not be germane, because that's the 2 lane versus 1 lane. This is about a particular, the way it was noticed is it was an agreement. So if the commission wishes, they can continue it, that's appropriate. But then we would have to notice it for action on holding a public hearing at another meeting. So that would not be appropriate here that would be out of order relative to this particular item.
So let me.
Then I amend my motion to simply continue the matter
To the next meeting? To a specific date.
to the next meeting.
Second?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion.
Thank you.
And Brett?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, and I think we're wrestling a little bit here, how the 2 relate. And I guess my thought is if you change the design, right, of the current proposed, to either move it or have 2 different places, then might you be spending money here in the wrong neighborhood with the wrong businesses if you decide to move the track of the south line extension. So doesn't that really need to be solidified before you spend $2.4 million to help businesses?
Excuse me, Chairman Pastor, really, the discussion should be whether or not to continue this item. That's really germane. Once you start getting
Sure.
off of this particular
Okay.
item, it wasn't noticed, and so we really need to be careful
Sure.
about that. So
Yeah, and so my comments were around supporting continuance, because continuing it would give the community and the commission time to understand that, make sure we're spending $2.4 million in an area that should be addressed. So I support the motion.
Well, any other comments?
I have some questions about the proposal from staff.
Okay.
So.
Can we just can we deal with the continuance and then we'll go with the proposal, okay? Can we do that?
That's correct.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be to not support the motion. We understand what the motive is, but that was decided back in 2014. And so I would ask that you not concur with the motion. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
Well, let me finish the, all those opposed say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. We ask for a recorded vote. Megan?
Okay, this is for the continuance. Chair Pastor,
Nay. No.
Commissioner Altieri,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
No.
Commissioner Blau,
No.
Commissioner Knight has a conflict, Commissioner Loyola, Commissioner Martin,
No.
Commissioner Malore. No. Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Neymar,
No.
Commissioner Pandrazio,
No.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
and Commissioner Tempest has a conflict. We have 8 noes, 3 yeses, and 2 in conflict.
Motion fails. We'll proceed now with discussion on the proposal before us. So, Patrick, you have.
So I serve on the South Mountain Village Planning Committee, where a significant portion of this project is coming through. We've heard a lot of various certainties that have been part of the proposed analyses and study reports. One of those was the lane configuration. It's been presented at multiple public meetings, including at the Audubon Society, at a large open house style meeting there, and some others. One was at the South Mountain Village Planning Committee. We had representatives from Valley Metro come speak to us. So they could tell us all about the engineering, but we had a lot of questions about some of the other factors that I know have been more quietly addressed in focus groups and things of the sort regarding some of the TOD outcomes on the community. One hot topic for us is gentrification, and then sort of a countermeasure that's been discussed, but we're still looking to be a little better educated about it, is equitable transit-oriented development. That specific terminology was something that I scanned through this proposal looking for, and I wasn't seeing it, but I'm curious how that presented itself through the RFP process, and if staff has any comments about how we're approaching the TOD goals, missions, however else, the directives to account for equitable transit-oriented development. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, part of this grant, as I spoke about earlier, is our land use planning portion of it, which will be headed up through our planning development department. And that's really the big focus on that, making sure that the types of development that come into this area, working with the community, are types of development that can support what's currently there and provide that community what is needed. We've truly looked at the comments that we received dealing with gentrification and displacement. We know that that's a very big concern of this community in this area. That's why we've kind of labeled this as preserving the legacy while building the future. That was another one of the deciding factors on maintaining one lane of vehicular traffic in each direction instead of going with 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, so that we could minimize impacts to businesses and properties along this corridor, making sure that businesses were able to stay in place and stay intact. That's another reason why this grant, that as far as the equitable portion of it, that's why this grant is so key, is that this is the first time that we've been able to, with any of our extensions, have the opportunity to do early action business assistance. Normally we have a business assistance that takes place as part of our construction, but this is something that's going to happen before construction. And so we have a seamless process to where we can help businesses before construction, during construction, and even a short time after construction is completed, to make those businesses more robust and make sure that they can withstand the construction that's going to come their way and the impacts that infrastructure like this will bring to that area.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to that, I think you did a good job, Marcus, of explaining what the work that's going to be done coming out of this, but the intent of the grant is for it to be equitable, transit-oriented development, and a big piece of what makes that equitable, it fits within that definition, is the involvement of the businesses, the property owners along the corridor in that planning, and the extent that we're going to go to bring them and engage them into that process, and that's really at the heart of this grant.
So there was an interesting comment that Marcus made about displacement of businesses. So part of this design, I believe, was intended to avoid displacing businesses, and that, I mean, again, that's back to the engineering. We've heard a little bit at past meetings about where else this has been done, namely downtown Mesa, and I'm curious how that discussion has evolved, if there's been any new revelations, any new exploration of how the two areas differ and how that entered into the scoring and proposals that were accepted by the city.
I was not involved as part of the panel that reviewed the proposals, but what I can tell you is that we have looked at other areas that have done similar situations, such as Mesa, where they have reduced their travel lanes from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and they have seen great success with this. And to speak to that, their new extension that they're currently under construction is continuing to be 1 lane in each direction instead of going back to a 2 lane in each direction geometry for the streets. And so that information has been seen. We have looked at how Mesa functions versus how South Phoenix functions and the South Central Extension functions. I don't want to leave anyone out by saying South Phoenix. So we have looked at that, and we are working with our street transportation department to look at remedying any ways, any infrastructure improvements that need to be made, as well as this project as it comes through to those areas.
So Commissioner Brendan, the other thing I would say is, one of the things that we keep doing is meeting with those stakeholders one-on-one. So the teams of City of Phoenix and Valley Metro staff go out and meet with the stakeholders, and they look at the property, and they hear their concerns, and then we in turn are going back to look at the design to see what can be done to mitigate those concerns. We've looked at everything from business access, driveways, sidewalks leading up to their driveways, ingress, egress before, during, and after construction. And I think that's the key, is meeting with those stakeholders one-on-one. Excuse me. And that will continue. I don't know if that helps address your question, but myself, my team, and a good number of Valley Metro staff have a handful of meetings on our calendars every single week where we are going out to their site to evaluate their property. We're having them come to us, and then we in turn go back to the design team and say, what can we do in this area? So we're looking very closely to that, because we know we have to pay attention to that, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, the memo that we received on the first page, the grant will fund comprehensive proactive business assistance that will include business owner workshops, detailed inventory, and needs assessment for businesses in the corridor. Can you give us a little more details to what that entails, please?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Commissioner. So with that, we're looking to have business owners from other previous extensions come to a workshop that will be facilitated by our consultant to give examples and real life examples of the experiences that they've had with this light rail and light rail extensions in those areas, in those corridors, as well as doing the business, like you said, assessments, which will be done on an individual basis, because we realize that, especially in South Central and the South Central Extension, is that we have a tremendous amount of small business owners and mom and pop shops. And so what works for one business may not work for another business. And so the key is to go in and talk to these businesses individually and develop a business assistance plan that can be implemented that will address the needs of each of those businesses.
Those business plans are developed individually
Yes.
in cooperation with the businesses.
Yes.
What if they're not satisfied? What happens?
Well, part of the grant is we actually do have a matrix system that they have to track success. And so as they're doing the success matrix, if they see that the businesses are not satisfied or that the outcomes are not what they projected them to be, then they have the ability to make adjustments to the plan at that time.
And when the 19th Avenue extension occurred, there were a number of businesses, well, hit wherever the rail has gone, there have been a number of businesses that have lost customers, and therefore they lost revenues. Will there be some kind of cushion offered by the city to assist the businesses stay in business?
So we will, as part of this grant, we will look at ways to help the businesses survive through the construction. I shouldn't say survive, but thrive through construction. But we have not looked at providing any cushion for loss of revenue. Our whole objective of this is to help them build their base so that they can find new revenue sources, and we can also try to capture other revenues that we can. We're also working with nonprofits and other agencies that have resources along the corridor so that we can use them to get access to capital. Because that's really what it comes down to, is them being able to maintain their access to capital. And so we know that we're only able to do so much with our city funds, whether it be from the grant or whether it be from T2050 or however we receive those funds. But we try to leverage those funds with nonprofits that work within the corridor so that we can get them in place with small lending and micro grants and things of that nature that can help them with access to capital.
Mr. Chair, if I may also add to that, to clarify the use, when it comes to the use of public funds, there are certain limitations on what can be done with those funds, and they can't be gifted to businesses or legally be gifted to businesses. So that's why this work is set up this way. However, as Marcus referred to, the connections with nonprofit organizations and other philanthropic organizations where there aren't the same restrictions on the funding is a part of the work that's going to be done here as well, which can help in those circumstances.
And my final question, will you be providing updates on progress of how many businesses you've touched with and what they've done, and if any have gone out of business or decreased in revenues or anything like that?
Chair and Commissioner, yes, we will be more than willing to come back and provide updates at your request for businesses that we have been able to help. That is part of the actual grant work. They have to track businesses that they're working with, and also track, like I said, on the matrix, the progression that they're making with each of these businesses.
Mr. Chairman, in that case, I would make an official request that that be done on a regular basis to see what the impact is. Because I think that we owe it to the business people who work and live there to see what impact we're having on them. And if indeed we're going to make it a better area and better opportunities for them, then we need to see that as an outcome. Thank you.
I would suggest to you, once this grant is out in the field in reasonable time, is allowed to be implemented, that you may ask that it be part of the agenda in one of the meetings, and we will happily accommodate you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sue? Art? Jennifer? Anybody? Bill? Brett? Gail? Rick?
No.
All right. No further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the commission recommends city council approval to execute a contract with Promise Arizona and Gould Evans and all of the other folks who are associated for an amount not to exceed $2.4 million to complete business assistance, TOD planning, and urban design services for the South Central Light Rail Extension project.
All those in favor say aye. Wait a second. Oh, I'm sorry. Second?
Sure.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Sure.
About a second. Would it be appropriate in this case, or would it even be helpful or necessary to amend the motion to say as structured in the presentation so that we assure that we're getting the $2 million federal match?
Well, do you want to amend it? Well, if you want to
Let
amend
me
it, go ahead and
just
amend
ask
it.
the staff, is there any concern about that?
Yeah, I think I'm
Legal staff?
offering it as discussion feedback.
I just want to make sure I understand your point, so that you're saying to include the designation of the $400,000 match to go along with it?
Correct. So I think that the motion is not that we're committing 2.4 million in spending, but we are committing $400,000 of T2050 funding as the match to the federal grant money. So that would be the motion.
I think it doesn't hurt to make that clarification. What's actually being approved tonight is the award of the contract, or recommended for approval is the award of the contract for which that funding will pay for.
So I don't think we need to amend the motion. I think we just, the minutes of this discussion will be a record that that's where the money will come from. But if you feel strongly about it, I guess I could amend the motion.
I don't know that I feel strongly about it, but I just, yeah, I did want to at least make that a matter of record, so thank you.
All right,
So,
motion made,
seconded.
seconded by Gabe, Viola. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
Okay, this is to approve.
Approve it.
Commissioner Altieri?
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan?
Yes.
Commissioner Glau?
Yes.
Commissioner Knight has a conflict. Commissioner Loyola?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Abstain.
Commissioner Malloy? Yes. Commissioner Miller?
No.
Commissioner Namer? Or Vice Mayor Namer?
Yes?
Or Vice, sorry.
Not a chance.
Commissioner Vingrazia?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
I've got a point of clarification. Why did Commissioner Martin not, or you have legal reason for abstaining?
No?
You're just abstaining from this vote?
Yes?
So you don't have a conflict of interest?
No?
Okay, thank you. No.
I would declare it. Okay.
It just feels like abstaining.
Commissioner Tempest has a conflict. And Chair Foster. So we have 7 yeses, 3 nos, and 3 conflicts or
No,
abstentions?
just one abstention.
Oh, 1 abstention
One
and 2
abstention.
conflicts?
Seven ayes,
Mm-hmm.
3 noes, 1 abstention, and motion carries.
Yes.
All right. Can you write us, let us know one of these days why you abstained, but not this meeting?
We expect a 2-paragraph essay.
Done.
All right. Complete streets.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, item 5 is an item for Complete Streets Design Guidelines as recommended by the Complete Streets Advisory Board. And here to provide an explanation, a very high-level overview of the Complete Streets Design Guidelines is Chris Kowalski from the Street Transportation Department. Chris?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, as well as commission members. My name is Chris Kowalski, as Mario mentioned. I'm a Special Project Administrator with the Street Transportation Department. And I've been assigned for the last 10 months with our Complete Streets Advisory Board to assist them. And so I just want to take a quick moment, if I could, to just recognize the board and their efforts. I know they've tirelessly worked in terms of providing recommendations that we're going to go over and look at in the preview. And so I want to be able to give them the kudos that they deserve. Mr. Chair, would it be the appropriate time to introduce the board's chair, the Complete Streets Advisory Board chair?
Well, as a courtesy to her, I was going to ask unanimous consent from the commission to allow her 5 minutes to make a presentation. And that would be going against our usually 2 minutes. I figured as a courtesy we could allow her, so is there any objection that we allow her these 5 minutes to make a presentation on behalf of her board?
Mr. Chairman, did she submit a card?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Since we got peanuts, it's all right.
Wow, you're cheap.
Is she here?
Yes.
Right there.
Well, where's she?
Okay. Oh, okay.
Just missing my baby, my screaming grandson.
Well, you can go ahead, you can go ahead, you're on for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
It started 2 minutes ago.
Down to 3 now.
Well, you don't have to take all 5 minutes, but
Okay.
courtesy, you're the chair of
Says
respect.
something in my own presentation. Mr. Chairman, members, thank you so much for allowing me some time to speak. I know you've got a really full agenda tonight, so I'll just be brief. I just wanted to mention, I know the staff will be quickly reviewing what the guidelines are. I know you've got a copy of them in your packet. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the process and the committee. For those of you that don't know, my name is Leslie Dornfeld, and I am the chair of the Complete Streets Advisory Board. We're a citizens board. We represent all of the council districts. Our members include folks from the development community, the disabled community, the senior community, landscape architecture, and the professions. We have a member of the Planning Commission on our board, and several citizen members, bicycle and pedestrian advocates, and folks also that advocate just for cars and for people to be able to use streets well, and for transit. Our committee's been meeting over 3 years. Chris has been a recent addition, a very welcome and recent addition in terms of staff to develop these guidelines. The guidelines started with a citizen committee that was not staffed at all by the city. They were presented to every single village planning committee and supported by every single village planning committee, as well as many other organizations in the valley. When they were presented to council, the council adopted the Complete Streets Ordinance, formed our committee, directed us to create policies, design guidelines, and performance measures. We've had a policy adopted. Chris will